What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Lioneye's Watch podcast. Last week we had Chris on for discussion about Atlas of Worlds. Today is all about the Shaper fight, boss immunities, build of the week. We also have a straw poll we wish you guys to participate in later. And finally, we're going to talk about 3 different skill gems that we feel a bit could use some attention or something like that. And with me, as always, I have my 2 bro hosts, Hegemony. How's it going, guys?
What's up? Glad to be back.
Hello. This is going to be some fun discussion today.
Let's hope so. So we're going to start with the build of the week today. Present that. And this build we've chosen here is not only very non-meta, but it's also making use of one of the new unique items that drops from one of the Guardians. The build is designed by Kuchi, and he has named the build the Scourge Knight, as it utilizes the new claw, the Scourge. And it has that unique property of having minion damage nodes also being applied to your character and giving you a 10% chance of spawning a Spectral Wolf on kill. The build itself is a Dominating Blow, Aegis Aurora, Max Block Necromancer. And the gameplay I'm gonna enable right now is the build in action you see down there. The build is pretty cool. There's a few things we personally disagree a bit with. That said, we still want to showcase this as it can prove to be, as it is a very valuable inspiration to some of you guys out there. And Kuji has done a really good job of presenting his information and his choices in the guide. So let's start by talking about some of the skill gem choices. Hedgie, will you take this?
Yeah, so I was going through the build and I was looking at all the choices that he made, and Dominating Blow is notorious for having a pretty high mana cost. Now they've gone back and reduced it and made it way more accessible. Before, back in the day, you pretty much had to run it with blood magic. So I was looking through his gear, and it seems like he sustains everything just off of regen alone. He runs blood magic with clarity, and he's using Whirling Blades with Fortify for extra defense. That's always good. And he's making use of all the global minion damage nodes, whether it's the Bone Helmet, the new base that was implemented during the Atlas, gives you 40% minion damage on the implicit. That also gets applied to him, which is very cool. Inside the helmet, he has War Chief, Conk Effect, Splash, and Melee Physical. Now, Splash doesn't have any interaction with War Chief, and I'm curious if this was because he was running Protector before and he swapped to War Chief later. So I'm not sure why Splash is there. For Dominating Blow, he has Multi-Strike, Melee Fizz, Melee Splash, and then he chose Added Fire. Now, I found this interesting because he didn't go for increased duration or minion damage. Minion damage seems to be one of the strongest supports that you could use, that really makes that unique shine, because you will get damage and your minions will get damage.
Well, you won't get... The minion damage does affect the Dominating Blow skill.
Right.
But it won't double dip with the Claw. Mm-hmm. And the Claw is very specific to the increased damage and increased damage alone.
Right.
And I wonder if...
But it's still more than Added Fire.
Yeah, so that was... I was trying to figure out why that happened, and maybe it was just unaware of the interaction.
Yeah, and some of the other slots, he has Casting Damage Taken, Convocation, Riposte, and Immortal Call. So it's clear that he likes the automation. He likes it so much that he goes dual Casting Damage Taken. He has another Casting Damage Taken set up in his boots with Enfeeble and Desecrate. And then he self-casts Bone Offering. And I'm guessing that Desecrate is there whenever he takes a hit, it drops some bodies, and then he can cast Bone Offering. So that's all he has to do, because it is an Aegis build, and he really needs that block because that makes his defense really shine.
Mm-hmm. And you're going to want to be self-casting your offerings, because on a cast on damage taken, you want them to be up as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's not going to worth just having the automated cast on damage taken, meaning your minions are buffed like 5% of the time.
And offerings, of course, work very, very well here since he is playing as a Necromancer.
Yes, since he has that node in the Necromancer that shares the offering, it's definitely, he's onto something. With the block synergies with Bone Offering and Aegis Aurora, he's able to get cap with just the Jewel and the offering, and what it was a 32% passive from the Aegis and the skill nodes. Yeah. So it's very easy for him to hit the cap. I did notice that when I totaled up his armor, it was something around like 1200 base, and I didn't see any armor on the tree, but he did not post his flask, so he could be running a granite flask of Iron Skin, which would give you a substantial amount of armor to make those blocks more meaningful with the ES returns. But yeah, a lot of automation. He's definitely defensive oriented. He's focusing on block, mitigation, automation, and the casting damage taken in Mortal Call.
And overall, it's just really cool to see someone picking up this Scourge Claw and actually trying something out with it. I want to try that myself soon. I found one, actually.
The spectral wolf that gets summoned from the claw is apparently modified by the gems that you put in the claw.
This is a new change in the recent patch notes.
Yeah, so the build at the time wasn't set up with that, so that is something else you can keep in mind. However,
it is on kill, however.
Yes, and that's so on kill. Dominating Blow applies a debuff for a very, very short period of time, and if that mob dies, not necessarily by your Dominating Blow attack, any party member, as long as that debuff is on the mob, it will be converted on death. Which means the more minions you have, the less spectral wolves you'll see. And then being at a 10, so if it was like, okay, well, you kill your first mob with Dominating Blow, summons a Spectral Wolf, and then, it helps you ramp up into the Dominating Blow build, or with all the minions, but it's only a 10% chance, so you couldn't rely on that.
One other alternative you could simply do is while it is it really gives you that minion vibe, you can simply run it as an attack-based build purely by itself, running a different attack skill, Reeve, Poison Reeve, something like that. There's a lot of cool options with the claw here.
How do you guys generally feel about Dominating Blow as a skill and how it plays, and how do you feel about being at the mercy of whatever mobs that spawn in your instance? I mean, that's kind of where the clunkiness comes in, because sometimes you're just like, all right, when it's working great, and then you get zombies or something that's just super slow. And then you're just like, wow. Yeah.
I've only briefly tried Dominating Blow before. It's one of those skills I've always wanted to play around, but every time I make a skill tree around it, I just feel like, there's so much crap that needs to really synergize here that doesn't really synergize. And I think the new claw here makes that a little more interesting.
I find it's probably very similar problems with Spectres because of the base movement speed, especially when you're stuck, as you mentioned, getting a zombie. It can be very difficult for the mobs to really keep up. If they're constantly being convocated, then they have to reset their animations. And the AI of the allies are just quite stupid. They do a lot of damage. If you've played a Dominating Blow build, when you've hit the snowball point, you walk into a boss room and you're like, this is amazing. It is tons of fun. But then you fight, Bemeth, and he kills everything, and you're like, well, that's kind of a shitter.
I'm just going to delete my character here.
And that's the thing, with Dominating Blow, when you don't have the minions, you have so much investment into your own minions that, it's just like, what do you do then? It'll get very clunky if you ever leave the zone and you don't have your minions. So it's definitely something to think about, and it's really, really hard to gear and decide where you need to push your own damage or whether or not you want to push your minion damage. And honestly, minion damage doesn't seem like it's too bad. You just need to get them to move faster.
Yeah.
Maybe
you can't do Uber Lab with the build too. I just can't farm it.
Yeah, Izaro, he's not going to care. Seems like it would be a good idea to use maybe the essences that were released this league that gives you movement speed, like some of the jewelry. Yeah, and that would probably increase the quality of life as far as clear speed goes. Maybe, definitely work in flesh offerings somehow. But overall pretty interesting.
We took a look at the skill tree as well. PG, you want to start with this?
Oh, just pulling up the tree right now. It's going to have your general stats. The main focus you always need with minions is the claw does scale with minion damage. So that means your jewels and minion builds, you're getting a bit of extra effectiveness. But if you're just using the claw for dominating blow, it's giving you a stat that you already don't need. Dominating blow doesn't need to do much damage, and for the most part, you're just going to have, let's say, zombies or maybe a specter. Now, the persons actually decided to scale their own damage a decent amount and avoided scaling minions, so it's not a dominating blow build that's abusing minions so much as it is they're actually scaling the main hit dominating blow.
Yeah, it's more of an attack build.
Yeah, and the minions are almost extra.
Yeah.
They have a very just odd choice of tree. They want to do the Iron Reflex. They're scaling evasion alongside their armor so that they can get as much from the Aegis. Since then, they're a Necromancer. They have the option of, they're getting a decent amount of both life and energy shield on block, which, will take you until you get one shot, and that's fine. But this is not a build that you would want to play at the extremely high tiers. This is just a nice, janky fun for yourself.
What I like about the skill tree is that it just goes fucking everywhere. You start as the witch, then head down, visit the shadow. Why not go down to the ranger as well, say hello, pick up some block there. And while we're there, let's go to the fucking duelist as well and say hello. And we're not done yet. We're going to go up to the Scion as well. And it's just, there's nothing wrong with it, but it just looks hilarious when you look at it.
I would not recommend it for hardcore. That is definitely something.
Yeah.
It looks a bit sketchy for hardcore.
What we want to do with this build here, guys, is to really show that you can do some pretty cool stuff with that claw. And this guy, he took it upon him, and we applaud him for that. So take the build as inspiration. Maybe try and make some for yourself. Follow this build if that's what you want. But try making something. I want to see some cool builds with this, besides what we already have here. Go ahead.
It is worth noting that the claw right now is currently 100 chaos on hardcore Essence League.
Really?
And it's about 1 to 7 chaos on softcore, and in standard it's like 1x to 6x. Yeah, it's crazy expensive.
I think I found it the other day. I think it was only like 55 chaos orbs, 57 chaos orbs, close to it, something like that, in softcore. But yeah,
it's a neat claw, and I like what they're trying to do with the unique stats available onto it. The only concern that I have is just I'm like, is it really worth actually utilizing the minion scaling on the claw, or should you just kind of go with the normal minions? The only thing, though, if you've never played a dominating blow build, watch out for that exile with lightning arrow, because it will shoot through all the minions and one-shot you.
Feels good, man. Feels good.
It's terrible.
I think I want to try doing like a dual wielding type of thing with this claw. Go Reeve, poison, scale fucking minion damage. Something cool with that.
That wouldn't double dip the minion damage scaling, though, would it? No, because it's just a stat that says your minion damage scales. So.
But you need to consider I have 10% extra chance to spawning a wolf.
It's true. So,
yeah, I can use like different setups for my wolves.
It does have the implicit minion damage. The claw on it has the 70% minion damage, and you would have 2 of those. So there's maybe. Yeah. I'm curious. Do it. I'm curious to what you can pull out of your ass.
Yeah, you gotta try.
Yeah, I have an idea actually. Just using maybe the claw with GMP Spectral Throw and Curse on Hit, and then running like a classic type summoner.
Oh yeah, that could actually be cool as well.
Yeah, and going the zombie route to get tankiness, per stack.
Yeah, that could actually be cool as well.
Yeah, worst case scenario, it's just a solid main hand for summoners.
Yeah, exactly. We should probably mention that he uses Rainbow Stride, Stone of Last War as well, to make sure that he reaches that very high spell blockchains as well. So this is a build that just completely rides on block. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. check it out, guys. And I think PT probably can link the build down there.
I can link it again. I think we've linked it a couple times.
And we also want to say thank you very much, Gucci, for submitting the build to us. We appreciate that.
And if you want other builds, just harass me. Send me messages, and we'll get them on the list of people who want their builds to be showcased.
Mm-hmm. Yes. All right. We're going to head into a Shaper discussion now, guys. We have had some Shaper fights, or seen a lot of Shaper fights during the past 2 weeks. I've had a few attempts myself. What about you guys? Have you had any attempts yet, Hedgie?
Yeah, I ran some sets very early on, and I had some success, but I definitely hit a wall where phase 2 ad phase was definitely crushing me, and I tried to stay in despite Zana dying. And basically there's this mechanic where there's this portal that spawns, ads come in, and they try to destroy Zana. And if they're successful, she delays this this bubble, this aura where you need to stand in, where this bullet hell from the sides comes and just wrecks you. So
they pretty much one-shot you.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not standing in the bubble, you're probably going to die.
Yeah.
Now, other people have, found ways around this, and they more or less just log out and come back in and wait for the entire duration for the immunity and to go away, and then they get through the phase. I didn't know that. I just kept going through it, and so a lot of failures happened there.
What did you find to be was that the hardest part for you, or?
Well, as a melee character, I didn't know a couple things. That if you stand a little bit away, then he'll cast those yellow balls, and if you stand right up against her, the Shaper will actually not cast those balls in succession, and you can only take 2 of those until you're dead.
They destroy you.
Yeah, they completely destroy you, and if you don't have stun immunity, you're just going to get stun locked after the first one. So knowing that information and knowing the DPS requirements, it's definitely very, very cool, and I really like the design because they're playing with real estate, the space that you have to work with to encounter the boss. And while it's not explicitly shown that there's like a enrage, it's kind of like a soft enrage. You will eventually run out of space, and the boss will have its way with you.
It really, really requires you to be constantly aware during that fight. During my attempts, I went in blind first of all, so I had no idea what I was going up against. I think at the first time I got him to like 50%. But what ultimately killed me every single time for my 3 attempts and prevented me from killing him, finally I got him to 20 or something like that. But that was me not being able to keep a cool head during that fight and placing those balls of crap around the circles of the map, and eventually just end up having them in the middle of the map where Sana spawns, where you have to go into that circle, and you can't go in there because there's fucking crap all over the floor, and then you die. It is a really, really awesome fight though. So much fun. And it is one of those fights that I don't think a lot of people should expect to actually complete this fight. It's a tough fight, and I guess maybe there's of course the cost of getting to the Shaper. That's one thing that's going to exclude people, but also the people who are going to the Shaper. I'm not sure if they want to invest that amount of risk to actually going in there. But what did you think of the first phases, Hedgie? Like, you're visiting these mini bosses and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, I love that. I love how it's so random because it kind of forces you to have a well-rounded build. You can't just go in with a specific setup and expect to do well against the quad bosses. Like one of the interesting ones was Rigwald. He was found in he was the first boss that I encountered, and I was like, what the hell? Yeah. I was like, I thought I was going to get easy. Like, I saw all these other videos, and they had easy bosses, and then I get him. Yeah. But, I mean, I dealt with him. It's just harder than others. But I really love that random element. It keeps it interesting. It's not static. You don't know everything. And while, you carry certain flasks, certain resists, you need to be prepared. So.
I wonder how many different bosses they have in there. I think I've seen so far around 12 different bosses or something like that.
Yeah.
But
what do you think about that, PT? About the whole design of the quadrants and having randomness?
PT's busy dancing over there. I don't know what the fuck he's on right now.
It's a good idea to have some kind of general mechanics, in which case you're forced away from completely min-maxing a specific thing, right? And that definitely is a good tool. At the same point, it's maybe a little bit mean to certain builds, because there are bosses that are quite difficult for, and it's always melee and sometimes summoners. Yeah. And if you get those bosses, it's just kind of like, well...
They make it impossible for you to actually prepare.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And then the Shaper fight himself is just kind of... it is its own different mechanic, so I'm surprised they didn't try to incorporate the function of that tool inside the fight itself, rather than just, hey, random bosses. But random elements are always nice.
I didn't really found any of those bosses to be too much of a challenge, though. And I don't know if eventually it's just going to feel like a chore having to do those just to get to the Shaper fights.
Are they balanced around as if they were upgraded to tier 15? So
yeah, I was curious about that as well, if they actually count as tier 15 bosses.
Because I would assume they would have essentially just used their Xana calculations and potentially scaled them up to like whatever the tier 15 17.
They're scaled up. They have a lot of HP. Yeah, but they don't have any map mods, so that's like one of the big things to consider.
Sure. I met the Reso in there, and when I saw that guy, I didn't feel too good. But it wasn't too bad. Like it felt easier than the tier 15, but I guess it's just because there was no map mods. It could be for that simple reason.
Well, yeah, because the thing that ends up fucking you over with Dureso is having to deal with him having an elemental damage mod, because those swords get ridiculous with elemental damage, or hasted increase area of effect.
You're being cursed or something like that.
Yeah, Temp Chain.
Yeah, exactly.
Another thing that I found that was really interesting with the Shaper fight was after you're done like phase 1, you go into like a recycle phase and you get put in this, I don't know, this area where the bosses or the monsters don't give you any loot. It allows you to recharge your Vol skills if you're using them, replenish souls, but the longer you take, the more the more the Shaper that will heal. So at the end of this long gauntlet type thing, you have to deal with a boss with an insane amount of HP. And from most of the streams I've seen, and people are swapping to their hardcore single targets, whether it's swapping in Conk Effect, adding in a totem, just squeezing out more DPS so they can get that Celestial Walker down like faster.
Yeah. It's not too bad, actually. Like, he has some very telegraphed attacks.
Yeah.
And once you realize how bad, like, how they are, he's actually a fairly easy boss to deal with. But he hurts in the beginning.
Yeah, he's mechanically easy, but he has an insane amount of HP. So, you feel like you're against the clock. You're fighting the clock and not something that's mechanically hard.
I didn't realize that the first time that I was going up against, like, time here. So I just chilled around in that area. When I came back, Shaper was just... He had a little more life than I expected.
The first time I was in there, I used that time. I was like, oh, I need to take a break. That's just so intense, I was like, oh my god, this is a time to cool off. But I didn't know it actually healed the Shaper.
But it is really, like, one of the benefits of that area really is that you can refill your Vol skills in there.
The other interesting thing about it, and it's maybe more, not really a subtle mechanic, if you teleport out of this instance, in other situations, essentially a map freezes in time and nothing progresses. When you initiate the Shaper encounter, or when you initiate this map, the map continues as if you were in it, even when you've left. Yeah. So, like, if you TP out while you're fighting him, orbs will spawn. If you TP, or if you've left it entirely, disconnect, whatever, while you're going through the gauntlet phase to kill the boss, he still regens. And I thought that was an interesting touch.
Are we talking about that phase specifically? or just in general, the shaper
yeah,
fight?
in general, the shaper fight has that mechanic.
So can you use that to your advantage as well? Like if you want to wait for Sana to get back alive?
Some people have done, like that's some of the times where people are TPing out in one of the last phase, especially the final phase when we have the second clone shaper.
Yeah.
If Zen is dead because of you mismanage your balls,
don't want to do
you
that.
can TP out so that you can survive that.
Oh man! Oh fuck! I just had known that.
Yeah, I mean, that's brought up like a pretty big debate whether or not this is a bullshit type mechanic where, you can actually escape the fight and skip the transition. How do you guys feel about that? Just removing that really sketchy transition and using the immunity time to avoid it.
I don't like that. I mean, it feels like you're cheesing the fights. I haven't tried it, obviously, then, but to me it sounds like you would be cheesing the fights. So.
And what about you, PT? How do you feel about this mechanic?
It's hard for me to say right now because, let's say, progressing through the Atlas solo Self-Found takes some time, and I haven't experienced it myself, right? So I'm fairly limited. I've seen a lot of the fight. I know a lot of its mechanics, but I also see, like, okay, so I have a solo Self-Found mace with shit DPS, and these builds are going in and going that slowly. Well, this is going to take a while before I really get an attempt. It's hard for me to say how that phase feels without one I'm just looking at it. So I can just be aware of the mechanic and for now say, that's all I can really. Actually on the video, they're abusing that mechanic right now.
How far do you think you are from trying out the shaper in your solo Self-Found adventure?
A month at best.
A month? Okay.
I don't even have a tier 15 map yet because crafting the DPS you need is incredible. Right? Yeah. The boss has an obscene amount of health, and if you don't have the damage, we were talking about the soft and rage timer. So I ended up playing Ancestral War Chiefs as my first character. It is a build that can definitely achieve the fight, but when I have a solo Self-Found health pool and I'm looking at only having like maybe 40k DPS, I need a lot more. There's no way 40k DPS Ancestral Totems without the Void Heart Ring is going to do shit.
Probably found it to be somewhat slow.
Yeah, and if I don't have enough speed, I can't do the fight. There is the soft and rage.
So how about we talk a bit about the life versus CI here for this type of fight? What do you guys think here, Hedgie?
Well, the easiest and cleanest kills have come from CI, Blade Vortex, and
Pathfinder.
Honestly, yeah, the Pathfinder. And I mean, it's a great build. It works very well, but I personally, I'm not really a fan of it because I want to see people move, dodge, not just face tank stuff. It's so disheartening for me because I want to see epic gameplay, not just a gear check.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I play Blade Vortex character as well. I just played as the Shadow, and as the Shadow or as the Assassin, you don't have the luxury of just standing there and tanking it because your flasks don't refill all the time. And that really gives you the feeling of having to move around all the time. And it does, I think a lot of people are sharing your opinion, Hedgie, because every time it just feels like if you do this fight as a Pathfinder, people don't really feel like you have actually accomplished something. That is not fair, though. It's still a very, very tough fight. And I don't think we should take away the people's achievement, but it definitely makes it easier when you can have that leech, that powerful leech up all the time and just leech through some of the sketchy mechanics.
It definitely falls in line with the players outsmarting the devs. We've seen this before where players use clever mechanics or existing tools and completely break some of the hardest content that they have prepared. I mean, look at Itsiri. Uber Itsiri came out, and what I really like about this game is when people, like I think Havoc, when he was preparing for Itsiri, he was snapshotting auras using 27 regrets, like respecking his tree. And Uberdan, he kind of did the same. I mean, they're playing in hardcore, so they can't afford to make mistakes. And if there's a more efficient route, then they're going to take it. Yeah. Uberdan, he respects 2 ascendancy points because it's more optimal in a certain phase. Yeah, you get one shot, one chance, and then it's done. So why not? It's like 10 regrets. But you can argue that kind of puts an extra gate that's not very accessible. But I guess I'm just a huge nerd, and I love that min-maxing, that preparation, the thought that they put in, okay, I'm going to run this wing, I'm going to fill up 1 Vol Discipline, and then I'm just going to beeline it for the mini-boss so I can get back to the fight quicker.
I think it's cool that you can do it, but I honestly would hate be utilizing that type of gameplay. I find it very tedious if I have to. Maybe a single respec point or 2 is not going to be an issue, but if it's going to cost me 10 regrets every time, if I have to respec 18 other points, things like that, it's cool you can do it, but it's not fun for me. And that would take away, the same thing I didn't like when summoners could snapshot back in the day. It was just like this fucking inventory management before you could actually go up against the fight.
But yeah, I mean, I kind of like that, but...
that's definitely it's kind of like the old D2 style. Like, I understand the, let's say, snap equipping, switching your Val Disciplines in fight, or even respecking between encounters. But at the same point in time, it also interests me to say, like, hey, when you enter this map, you're locked into your spec. No changing ascendancies, no... it wouldn't make too much sense in terms of how they would actually lock it because of, leaving the map. But I see both sides of that one, and I'm like, yeah, it would be interesting if you're kind of stuck as is. Imagine you couldn't, switch Val Disciplines, and you've got only the Val Disciplines you've got equipped. So, because I remember doing Uberitzer, and that's what I did. I'm like, oh wow, this phase can kill me, or I can have 14 Val Disciplines. Like, yay!
How many did you have actually?
5.
5.
I only had to use. I don't know if when I did the attempt, it turned out that I didn't have to use any. I never would have taken a lethal hit, but there's a difference between knowing you can take a hit and, shitting yourself because you're like, oh, dear God, my face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's, but yeah, it's a really interesting fight. And I don't know, for some, I almost feel like you should only have 1 attempt with this type of fight.
Like, if it opened with 1 portal?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Because for me, using portals during the fight, that allows you to cheese then, apparently. And the same thing goes if you're logging out mid-fights. And it's not that I blame people for logging out, because that's an accepted mechanic in the game here. So if that's how it is, then of course make sure you utilize all the tools you have. But isn't it more interesting if you couldn't do that?
I don't know. I don't think so. It's too expensive to begin with, and then increasing that entry, it puts GGG in a tough spot, because if server lags, or you have to log out, or you get disconnected for whatever reason, you're going to be pretty pissed off. I mean, GG is going to have like death threats. Oh, that one portal that opened up, you can't even, but people are going to look over that if they're like, all right, I have 5 more.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of for the 1 portal thing. Now, keep in mind that the Shaper fight might not have existed in its current form if they were like, oh, you have 1 portal.
It might have been balanced accordingly then.
Yeah, so there's a difference between balancing a fight, knowing players can log out and they have multiple portals to use, and designing the fight when they have none.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Maybe make it so Xana couldn't die. Because if Xana dies and you don't have a portal, you're like, well, I've got to be the best bullet hell player ever, or we're about to get raped.
This is what I tried. I didn't know I could use a fucking portal. So I just tried to avoid them. And I died every fucking time.
Apparently, you weren't using clever use of game mechanics.
I didn't know those mechanics were there. I should have done that. I should have researched. Going in blind, that was the most retarded thing ever.
It was fun. I mean, I went in blind too. I didn't know anything, but you could definitely see yourself getting better and better. It's something that takes repetition. Definitely want to practice it. But I wanted to ask you guys, did you guys have any favorite Shaper fights, like from the videos that we've seen on Reddit?
I think I really liked Mathel's attempt on some of them. They weren't, I don't know if he's done it deathless, but he has some serious dodging skills, and he really shows that with some mechanical skills here, you can really pull off some good a good Shaper kill here. And he was playing Spectral Throw Poison, right?
Yeah, I believe it was Double Dream Feather to get the extra point, like the double dipping scaling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually agree that Mathel did a very good attempt because he took the time and he really demonstrated how much just mechanical playstyle can aid you. Which helps to say that the fight was designed well and it's not just stand and fucking everything heal through it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, personally, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Hedgie.
I was gonna say, personally, I found Ziz's kill and Uber Dance to be my favorite because you
Ziz
can
in blue, yeah,
Ziz in blue, like
that was
you could
tense.
feel the emotion,
and
the amount of hardship and close calls that they had. It was so epic.
I was streaming at the same time they did that, but I just said, "Fuck you guys! I am watching stream Sis here in the background now." And you can go do that yourself, but I need to see this. It was so tense. It was so cool, man. So
I was
badass.
worried because their phase 1 looked extremely boring. I was like, oh man, this looks like Cheese City. Yeah. But then once phase 2 and phase 3 came around, shit started to hit the fan, and you could definitely feel the heat.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, like, Rise QT and Waggle's attempts, they were both Blade Vortex variants, different ones. What was interesting to see is it isn't like, oh, you're Blade Vortex, you can face tank it. You watch their attempts, and there is some just clench moments.
Yeah.
Yeah, Blade Vortex does not guarantee you a kill on Shaper. Not at all. Especially if you're not a Pathfinder. And that's, I think, it would be nice if people would realize that as well. But that's the meme now.
Yeah, and then the video we're watching, the Uberdan Essence Drain, Low Life Essence Drain. I mean, the way he had it set up, I'm such a fan of Uberdan. He does the most hardcore shit as soon as it comes out, and he does it solo. And he does it on the Australian gateway. So he's got like 50 to 70 ping, and it's not like the best ping at all times, but he pulls off, insane plays, and he makes such awesome decisions, like character decisions, itemization, skill tree, and I was honestly surprised that Uberdan wasn't the first one to kill it, because he usually is. But
there was some pretty close competition, which was nice to see. The thing though is there's not really a huge amount of builds. It's hard to say in terms of percentage wise. There's a lot of builds that are just going to be straight up like, oh, you're playing this build. Good fucking luck getting the damage.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is a very mechanically tight fight, and not only is it mechanically tight, it does have, I would say, a higher DPS threshold required than something like Uber in theory.
Yeah,
and that combination is, we're not seeing dominating below anytime soon to the fight.
Yeah, I saw some people on the forums some time ago complaining about this and this build and this build. Oh, it's not worth playing because it's not Shaper viable. And then you're just like, well, Shaper viable. It's a fucking tough fight. Maybe you can pull it off with the build, but seriously, it's not. You're not gonna just pick a build and then you'll kill the Shaper. That's not how it works.
Well, let's talk about the builds that have successfully killed it. I mean, we have Vortex, Essence Drain, Flame Blast, Blade Vortex, double totems, and we have Spectral Throw, and then we have Barrage. I know
an Earthquake's done one.
Yeah, Earthquake. EQ has done one, and Viper Strike.
Stunning Shaper.
I haven't heard of a stun Shaper kill, but.
How does that work, PT?
I think you missed. I said that an Earthquake build did it.
Oh, okay.
No stun. If you could, if someone stun Shaper.
I was just about what? Okay, there you have it. That's the build.
You just I unlock Shaper, and turns out the fight's pretty easy.
Turns out it's pretty good.
I mean, that's a pretty healthy diversity just within those, and I'm sure there are many more. But I mean, there are clear distinctions of which one's easier and harder. Yeah, there's EA Pathfinder. It's been very popular. I haven't seen the Worm Blaster kill it.
EA Pathfinder.
Like out. But I think it's in a pretty good spot. But I still feel like Blade Vortex is just way too easy.
Pathfinder Blade Vortex, I'll agree with. But that's a different thing.
The thing is, when builds are specifically solo, because with a support you can definitely gain a lot of power, and it can help you a lot in the fight. But when you have solo builds, keep in mind that the builds that are often you're seeing is like they have really fucking good gear. They aren't like, oh yeah. But then again, Rise with Blade Vortex did it even with the 5-link, and that was very, very impressive. There was a lot more that Rise QT could have done with his build. There was a lot. And he did it with a surprisingly, not shit gear, but with lower than you would have expected, especially when you see a lot of the other builds' accomplishment. So there's definitely some comments towards how much power Blade Vortex has on the fight in comparison to many of the others. And even then, the funny part is the skill was nerfed in its supposed top end.
It was nerfed by being buffed.
Yeah. they nerfed it by buffing it. Good job.
I mean, now that we've had some time, how do you guys feel about the rewards? Are they up to the difficulty of the Shaper fight and the amount of time it takes to even get there?
Well, I can say that in my failed attempts, in order to buy the fragments or keys, I spent a total of 280 Chaos Orbs on that for those 3 runs. And obviously, when you then fail 3 times, not so much. Not really worth it. Turns out it's not very good. No, but if, let's say I did manage to complete it, a typical set I think is around 70 to 90 Chaos Orbs right now. Yeah, at least in Essence Softcore. Isn't it only the flask and the sword that really sells for something like that now? The boots, how much do they go for? The gloves and nothing.
Yeah, the boots that you guys gave me a hard time on when I said it's the boots.
That's because you just moaned. You were just moaning. You made no sense.
The boots are still amazing for the builds. They're just more build specific. Just because something is cheap doesn't mean it's bad.
Oh yeah, I mean the Vertex is cheap.
Unless it's a prostitute.
It's definitely not bad. Yeah.
You don't want to go there.
Well, but the thing is, if you have 2 ridiculous items, it's obviously going to drive down the price of the other ones. That's just going to happen, regardless. It's like Aziri's Promise is a very cheap item, and it's good for a fuck ton of builds. But that doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, there's going to be different tiers of the rolls. That's going to definitely modify things, and then it's also how popular the builds are going to be for it, because the boots are more specific. They aren't generally powerful.
Yeah.
Right.
It's niche.
Whereas the flask
stuff
is surprisingly cheap.
How much does it go for the flask? Approximately.
Last time I heard it was 10 exalts, but that was on standard, I think.
Okay.
So I haven't actually checked them in I think they're 300 in the hardcore Essence League. Okay. Embu bought one, and he said he spent all his chaos on it.
Do we know if there is a certain rarity tier of these items?
Yeah, the sword is the rarest.
Okay.
So I was right on that one. PT said the flask is going to be the rarest, but the flask is the second, and then the boots, and then the gloves.
Okay, yeah, because I feel like I see people dropping the gloves all the time. I still think the gloves are pretty cool. There is some potential to make some gimmicky, awesome stuff with those, but...
Then do it.
No.
The gloves have become its own meme.
Why would I risk wasting my time creating something that sucks?
If I solo self-found kill Shaper and the gloves drop, I'm making a build with the gloves. It'll be terrible.
Yeah. No. But I'm currently playing a Flame Blast character that I'm hoping I'll be able to kill the Shaper with, because he doesn't have Ignite immunity. And I saw a video of a guy doing it. I'm not sure if he was an elementalist as well or whatever he was, but he actually managed to kill Shaper with Flame Blast. So I want to see if I can do that myself now.
I kind of want to see a Righteous Fire kill of him. I'm just...
Yeah. I mean, that would actually not be the worst build, because you have such a large health pool, you can take those heavy hits.
My problem is the damage.
How are you gonna
Sick
get it
regen.
back? Yeah, I mean, how are you going to get it back, though?
Good question.
Get what back?
I said I wanted to see it. I didn't say that, like, go do it because it's going to be good.
I'm going to do
I just
it.
wanted to see it.
I'm doing it.
I mean, one thing's for sure is this boss, the way it handles, there's definitely an advantage for people that are very mobile with their DPS. Somebody that has to tank it, you're going to have a skill that's so strong and a build that's so strong that you can just face tank its mechanics. Definitely, leech will be required if you do that, an insane amount of leech. But yeah, I mean, it kind of shits on a lot of melee builds, especially if you're movement speed oriented and your focus is on agility, because it doesn't really reward that. If you get out of melee range, you're not doing damage unless you're using totems.
Melee shafted on a boss fight. Wow, never heard of that before.
I'm having, like, I'm sure there's some, you guys mentioned Earthquake, that it can work. Maybe something like Ice Crash can as well, but man, it's so uphill. It's like, if you want to kill the Shaper, then you're probably not gonna choose that.
I mean, duration-based stuff definitely has, some merit, because like Earthquake, you can throw the fissure down and then move to a different spot and that's like the bulk of your DPS. You get Viper Strike, where you can get few meaningful hits and then move if you need to, and you're still doing a significant amount of damage.
Same with Flame Blast, right? Flame Blast Ignite. You get that hit in, you move around.
Yeah, things that have really strong degens, or you can put up a device that does damage for you, or you have Essence Drain, a projectile. These things are going to be pretty damn strong. And everything else, you're just going to have to outgear it, like brute force, leech, and damage through it.
Bull Poison belts could potentially work for this.
And the fight's going to always lean towards mechanical strength, because the boss does move around a good amount, and you can't tank too much of it, with the exception of the Blade Vortex shenanigans. So that means the higher uptime of your damage, even if you might be lower like tooltip or lower your single target tanking, it means that in all the time where you're moving to drop orbs, the vortex circles, or you're like turning left to dodge the beam, this is all time that you still get damage. So it's heavily rewarded. And then, as we mentioned, it is a huge damage check. And if you can't do the damage, you're going to get flooded. And it's not a small thing. It's not just, there's going to be so many vortexes, they fill up the screen, and the fight, you just run out of space. No, the slow on the ground is going to make it harder to dodge things, and then you have less space of dodging. It's not just running out of space, and then once you're limited, you're done.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've mostly talked about CI right now, but you can do this as live as well. You just need to make that clear as well. It's just that CI has some benefits here, right?
You get a faster reaction time.
Yeah. I mean, there was times when I wished I was live with my Blade Vortex build for those instapots, but at the same time, I also kind of appreciated being able to tank a Slame. But, yeah.
I mean, with CI evolving and getting better and better buffs, the energy shield recharge is one of the things that make it so appealing. You have 15k ES, you take a diesel hit, guess what? All you got to do is tippy-toe around a couple steps, and then boom, you're back up to 15k. Whereas the life base, even if you were to get over 10k HP, you have to wait an insanely long time to regen all your life back. And if you use a potion, okay, all right, less time if you have Righteous Fire and you have a Ruby Flask.
But you would still have to use the potion, which is what.
Right, the potion. Yeah, the potion is kind of like the crush. So you feel like you're at a significant disadvantage. Yeah. So you're gonna have to dance a long time to get back up without potions, or even with the potion, you're going to have to move a long time. And that's time that you cannot afford, because you need to be doing damage to the boss.
Yeah.
So there's just a huge distinction, and maybe energy shield recharge is too fast, or people can get too many tools that make it too fast where it's almost instant when you get out of combat.
Yeah.
But I think that has pretty much finished up the Shaper stuff, though. Is there anything else you want to bring up with it?
It kind of leads us into our next discussion. I mean, we're talking about bosses.
So just kind of going into that. Oh, what were you going to say, Lifting?
Do you want the straw poll up and running for this now? So
Sure, if you want to do it. So we did a straw poll, which is boss immunities, if you guys would want to kind of join in that conversation. We threw it
up here.
We threw it into the Reddit to see kind of what the general Reddit opinion was. If you guys want to throw up your vote on how you guys find boss immunities.
Just spam the straw poll link a few times. Thank you, Sylvie.
I spammed results, so I have to change the URL. Yeah. But the other thing that we wanted to do a little bit of a showcase was there we go. Actually, I hideout of the week. And we actually got one from, Surd.
Churd,
yeah. Churd, that's the one. I was like, there's a letter missing. Yeah, Churd, sorry. So we wanted to showcase what some of the people were doing, because it was one of the features they added into the game, and we're like, hey, you know what? Let's see what people have put a lot of their times, because we get totems when you have the high achievements, and I'm curious to what other people have done. So Churd did send a message to me. We managed to record his hideout, and if you want to be highlighted, once again, send a message to me. I'll just have to go in. We can record, and we'll highlight in the future. We're not going to go too much. We're not going to discuss the hideouts of the weeks, but it's just, hey, there's some things you can do, and it's some nice background video. And then that means we have boss immunities.
I'll just show the hideout here in the background. We already showed the straw poll. We're waiting for people to give their answers in, then we'll take a look at the straw poll again in a bit, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to know, what did you guys vote in this? Let's just go around the table. Your preliminary answers to this question.
So as for boss immunities, rare immunities, or mobs in general having some kind of immunity, I've liked it in some of the old school games, or especially like offline ARPGs, when there's a lot of different weighting. But in one like Path of Exile, when they give you a new boss and you're kind of gated towards it, I think it forces you to not play something, or punishes you because you've chosen to play something for no good reason. Yeah. And if there was a reason, I could be like, okay, but the only reason I see is like, we made poison too strong. Whoops.
Yeah, and then that's like a Band-Aid solution to just fixing that problem. Me personally, I find boss immunities or immunities actually to be, I kind of like them as long as they are not gating content. So if you've made an ignite character and there is a certain boss that you need to pass that cannot be ignited, that sucks. I don't like that. But if they're like optional bosses out there that aren't necessary for you to defeat, then I think it's interesting. It adds flavor to the game, and it's just going to make it more interesting the next time you actually have that character who can go through it. But I've been doing lots of Uberlap, but I can't do Uberlap on my Flame Blaster, for instance, because not Isaro, but Argus is immune to ignites, and well, I can still do it, and it's alright, but it feels shitty. But then I'll have to do it on another character, and then it adds like to that maybe flavor.
Yeah, but I think that's what I wanted to point out is I think that shitty feeling is kind of like it's necessary. That you feel shitty on certain characters doing the encounter, and then on a different character you feel very powerful. It's more meaningful decisions, and I think that's I voted in the minority. I said boss immunities are fine, but I do have some side notes along with that. I feel that chill immunity is a bit unfair. That's the only one that I have beef with.
Why?
Because cold crit casters or cold damage builds suffer because they put a lot of investment into that,
But poison builds suffer from poison immunity, and burn builds suffer from ignite immunity.
Right.
Why do you think they invest more hedging as a frost build?
Well, because that's part of your defense. You don't rely on other things. You have to worry about, applying your ailment and keeping it up to slow the enemy monsters down. And that's like your defense. You don't do as much damage as a fire build. You don't do, your skills generally cost more than other like physical, lightning, or fire skills. Cold spells are very, very expensive on your resource, but it comes with a cost. And when that cost is taken away, your build is shut down. So it's like it takes the reward out of, chilled ground, vortex, arctic armor, things like that are not insanely powerful, but, rendered utterly useless. So that's an exclusion that I don't really like. And I don't feel that it's kind of fair. On the same note, other things like we were talking about poison, ignite. Yeah, I like that a player or a character can go in and be like, well, this guy's immune to ignite, so I'm going to, instead of focusing on ignite, I'm going to make the initial hit count. So I'm going to stack conk effect instead of, increase burn or chance to ignite or things that synergize with that, and just worry and focus on the upfront hit. Or the payload.
But that isn't something you have access to doing when you're playing something like Viper Strike for poison, because without poison damage you're kind of screwed. Puncture without bleed or poison. Right, I can understand, like when you're talking about in general, there's a lot of the itemization towards cold spells, and that cold spell itemization is the defense that they gain from the chill and the freeze.
Right.
But not all builds are just putting poison on to enhance because it's better tooltip. There are builds that intrinsically function on poison, or builds that intrinsically function on bleed, and then it's just like, oh, you're puncture? Don't do this map ever.
Well, that's the thing. That's another thing, that like a dagger-based Viper Striker could switch into a different gem setup with possibly puncture instead of, because he's going to have a lot of the physical damage nodes, crit multiplier, and he's going to have damage over time. So he doesn't necessarily feel forced to. He could just use a different skill, but relatively the same build. Now, will it be as good as a pure puncture based specialist? No, probably not. But
could you make the exact same argument towards a cold spell? Switch cold pen for like recolor your chest and throw on a fire skill?
Well, not if you have all the investment in the cold stuff on the tree,
Well,
and
if you're investing into the poison damage, because you're a poison build.
Okay.
I see it as the same argument going one way or the other, so I'm a little bit confused why you haven't separated it.
I guess from the way I see it, then I can understand that cold, it's two-faceted. There is the defensive part of it as well, so maybe it gets hit a little harder. But I also think that when it comes to it, it isn't too much of a difference. Like, you get gimped. If you get gimped as a fire or lightning or poison or whatever, it still really sucks and it prevents you from continuing. But I understand what you're saying with the two-faceted part of it, Hedgie.
Right. I mean, it's just a choice that you make, and I think there needs to be builds where or encounters where your build feels very strong and others where it feels weak. Like, I think it's completely okay to have maybe ES or hybrid based builds struggle in the lab, and then on your Juggernaut it does it really well. Like, I'm totally fine with that. It makes it interesting.
Yeah.
I definitely like when there's different endgame content that rewards different styles of builds. Usually the lacking problem is, when we're talking about the Shaper fight, if there was an equivalent end game encounter in terms of its stature to Shaper, and one was good against one archetype of builds, whereas the other was good against other archetype of builds, then it's like, okay, my build can do this super endgame boss, but not this super endgame boss, and you get build diversity that way. The problem then comes out when you have just one, and then it becomes everything about like, oh, well, this can't do what is deemed as endgame, so sucks to be you kind of state.
But when you're making characters and when you're making things, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay for you to make a failed project and, rethink the way you want to approach whatever you're trying to accomplish. That's kind of like its journey in itself. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
No, I understand. Yep, fully.
Yeah, I mean, I think let's talk about hexproof. That's like curse immunity, and it not on a map mod, but just say on a random rare. I'm okay with curses being strong, like really, really strong, because occasionally you will run into a curse immune volatile, and it'll hit really hard. So you have that expectation. You're taking that risk that maybe you're clearing so fast you're not going to notice, and you whirl through COC discharge into a volatile that was hexproof, and it wasn't enfeebled, or it didn't have your defense was no longer calculated.
Yeah,
and you explode and you die.
I really like the hexproof single mobs as well. They make it very interesting, especially if you're relying on a leech mechanic, for instance, Warlord's Mark.
Yeah, that's another one.
You're going up against that, and that monster also have reflects. All of a sudden, you have nothing to protect you against that if you're like Volpacked into that. That makes it very dangerous.
In the case of the volatile, for example, though, so usually the heavy curse builds are often CI builds. What defense are you having that is relevant to the fact that you can't curse that mob? Wouldn't every other build also die to it?
No, I mean, it's just a matter of recognizing it. I mean, it depends on what build you're playing, but you don't have to run into a volatile. There are other things you can do. You could separate yourself from a mob, or kill it from ranged, or use a decoy totem, or skip it. You don't have to kill that mob, or you don't have to kill it in melee range or explosive
I was just trying to figure out how that ties into specifically the hexproof modification. I'm personally not a fan of the hexproof modification, and the reason is it's a similar reason why I'm not a fan of the blood magic roll happening.
Are we talking map mods now, or just single mods?
Well, map mods. Or it could be mobs.
I mean, it could be mobs. Yeah, I mean,
yeah. The reason is, I'm trying to think of the better way of phrasing this, because of how they've designed how much you invest into a passive tree and how they're not permanent choices, but you make a lot of time. It's good to choose strengths and weaknesses, but I don't understand why they don't do high curse resistance rather than immunity. And the reason ends up becoming a lot of the times when you're using a curse, it's not necessarily because you're like, oh, it enfeebles godly. What if it's your a functional generation that you can't play the build without? What if it's like Poacher's Mark Flicker, and it doesn't feel threatening in the right way to me. It just feels a little bit like, oh, okay, well that's a wall for the sake of a wall, and it's not challenging me. It's just like, oh, well, that's a bit awkward.
Well, I mean, the way I see it is you make a character decision. Do I use something that's arguably stronger, like a curse, and have it work 95% of the time? Let's just assume that I'm not running hexproof. We're just talking about monsters that we engage with on a regular basis. So 5% of the time, it won't work, right? I will not get a bonus. Or I could settle for using Herald of Ash, which is always a presence, and no one will ever be immune to Herald of Ash, right? So it's like a trade-off. I'm taking a weaker skill that works more reliably.
They will be immune to Herald of Ash because there's a role that there's the.
I'm talking about map mods. I'm just talking about, the game, the regular part of the game.
Okay. Well, there's still then resistances, and as we mentioned, boss immunities.
Right, but it's still always a presence. It's not completely deleted.
Yes.
You will have higher resistances, but this is a choice that you have to make. Do I want something that works all the time? Same thing with auras. Do I want to run Determination, or do I want to run Enfeeble?
Let's go with the exact example you've chosen. You're talking about a damage mod that gives fire. Would you be then fine with a mob that has fire immunity? Now, to bring this why I'm asking this is because there's fire resist and not fire immunity, because fire immunity would be too punishing for build choices.
Right.
Whereas, once again, going back to curse immunity, they could just do curse resistance the exact same way that they do elemental resistances.
It just it doesn't have the same impact, though. fire immunity versus curse immunity.
It could if they want to choose the numbers.
I mean, I really like the decision where it's you can have something really powerful, but it's not 100%, right? Or something that's just always a present. That's just like a generalization, a character decision. Whether we're talking about defense or offense, it's something that I enjoy as like I'm designing a character.
Yeah.
And I want to have a contingency. I don't want to, if curse immunity didn't exist, then they would have to severely nerf curses.
Well, here's the thing. I think they need to nerf curses even with curse immunity existing.
They probably do.
Right.
I can tell you, I played 2.5 months of a curse build. Didn't care. Never cared when a mob had curse immunity, because even then, the odds of a mob getting curse immunity and the threatening mods and being on a map with threatening rolls, it didn't happen. And I play a fuck ton.
So let me ask you here then, guys. We mentioned it, but do you think these immunities? Do you really think they actually help incentivize build diversity? Is that how it feels to you?
I think they take away fun for no reason. This is one of the cases for me.
But does that mean that it won't incentivize you to make a new build?
I immediately when I found out about the Shaper Guardians immunities, I threw out a whole bunch of builds that I was like potentially rolling next. I was like, same thing with the Uber Lab. Because of my personal constraint of Soul Self-Found, I'm immediately like, I'll never play Dominating Blow again. Thanks.
Okay.
Now that's not directly an immunity, but it is this wall that I can't really get across.
So you only view it as build reducing rather than maybe using
I don't
it as
see
a
it
challenge.
as a challenge to a build.
Okay.
I feel it as we made this build that you can play that's fun, and then we just said fuck you to the build. And I'm like, that's awkward.
See, I kind of see it the other way, where I do see it as a challenge. I'm at a crutch, and I already know I'm at a crutch. If my goal is to make one character that does it all and does it all the best, that's where I tend to draw the line. It's builds that break the game in every way and that have very little to no downside. That's where that's where I feel like it hurts build diversity, because people feel compelled. Well, this is there's so many good things about this build. Why roll anything else? That's the problem that I see. But then when I'm playing my character, I think it's important that when I'm doing a fight, I'm not going to back down from a fight. I'm going to try it. And I'm going to have that experience, and it's going to be way tougher. And I know that the odds are there are tools that are working against me, but if I log onto a different character, I'm going to have a different experience. I'm going to be like, wow, that was so much easier. This was, but that's the thing. It's important to feel good, and it's important to feel bad on a certain character, but not so bad where you can't do it at all.
But you just said so bad where you can't do it at all. Immunities create the you can't do it at all, in which case you can replace an immunity with a heavy punishment.
For some builds.
Like,
give me an example, because I mean, let's just...
Hexproof, rather than Hexproof, have a minus 60% curse effectiveness.
Okay. So, I mean, what will you not be able to do? Will you be at a significant disadvantage?
Well,
with your current setup? Yes, but...
Yes. Which would functionally do, because you've said once again you want a challenge. Well, if a hexproof map had like minus 80% curse effectiveness in the red tier, you would fucking feel it. You would feel it really hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see.
I'm just saying the challenge increases.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but the challenge is still increasing to the build that's depending on the mechanic, and it's making that mechanic no longer reliable. But it's not being like, hey, you invested into this, waste of your time.
All right, guys, let's move on. We have a prediction of the week as well. PT, do you want to talk about that?
I lost my tab right now for some.
My god.
No, okay. So I got this. Last time, what we did for the prediction was whether or not the day after the Shaper would end up being killed. But it turns out we had misleading information at the time, and people were trying to coax Rise QT and doing an attempt, and it turned out we were all wrong. It wasn't happening that day. However, so we were right that it wasn't done. But we all thought it would be done within the first month. Fantastic. Nothing too interesting there. What we did want to make a prediction was, are the channeling skills going to be coming out in 2.4 or 2.5? And Chris ended up mentioning that they might get delayed all the way down to 2.5.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, do you guys think that the channeling skills will be coming out before 2.5?
I'm going to go 2.5 on mine. That's my guess.
I mean, I'm inclined to think it's going to be 2.5. If the leagues remain healthy, I think they're just going to push it back. But if we have like a huge player drop off, I think they might actually push it to see what happens.
I think that when Chris carefully says that it may happen in 2.5, I think that's kind of like telling us in a soft way that it's probably not going to happen until 2.5. Now I've said it. So yeah, I'm going to go with it's probably not going to happen until 2.5.
Hedgie was 2.4? You said it's healthy, you're waiting.
It's contingent on the population.
No, this is not a serious thing. You have to pick. No offense.
Oh man. All right, I'm going to go with 2.4.
Okay.
Yes, we're not all agreeing.
Me and Lifting 2.5. There's a winner and there's a loser. Excellent.
Maybe
I'm only saying that because I'm
2.57.
I'm already kind of feeling a population drop off from the trades, but
but we could put on as many asterisks to our predictions as we wanted, and that would ruin the fun.
all right. 2.4.
All right.
So we also wanted to talk about some skills that we feel may require a bit of attention, or maybe they were left out in the patch notes, didn't get any attention, or maybe they are
got too much attention.
Maybe they got a little too much attention, yeah. And PT, will you start with this one?
All right. Well, I actually kind of wanted to bring up Wild Strike. When I remember Wild Strike being introduced before it went in, just kind of told about, and everyone was like, "Holy shit, Wild Strike!" And in theory, you attack, and either you get like this arc skill, you get this freeze pulse wind cutter, or you just get an infernal blow explosion, and you're like, "Wow, this sounds awesome."
Yeah.
And then they made it name lock. Why the fuck did they make it name lock? If you could shift attack with Wild Strike, it would be fantastic. I think there would be a lot of fun to it. Or even if they do want to, it has that really awkward scaling of, if you're not turning it fully into elemental, skills like Frostblades, Wild Strike, Molten Strike, whose secondary component don't count as the melee, as a melee component, can't scale with melee gems.
Yeah.
And your tooltip will go up, but your melee physical or melee physical on full life won't scale the secondary component. So it's given this really awkward scaling options, and it's terrible to begin with.
Not to mention how you build it, like in the skill tree. Like if you want to make sure you benefit of everything, it's like it's the hardest skill to build around.
Because it's like, okay, do I want projectile speed? That's only 1/3 of my attacks. Do I want area of effect? But that's 1/3 of my attacks. Do I want chains? But that's 1/3 of my attacks.
You pretty much just go for elemental damage and attack speed.
Elemental, and it's cool. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But it's weird.
It's fun to use as well. Oh, well, it could be fun to use if there wasn't the name locking. It's an interesting skill to use. It feels good to use.
And even Dying Sun only helps 66% of the attacks. It doesn't even do all of them, and it's the Dying Sun flask at this point.
Yeah. But
so it looks like a skill that would be so much fun, but it has two to three quality of life features that I don't understand. I can understand having one quality of life feature disadvantage because of like the power, and lacking some kind of quality can help define a skill. But all of those combined make it a bit awkward to me.
Yeah, I think so as well. So what would your solution be, PT? Is that simply the name locking, or is it like a complete fucking...
Allow the activation of the skill without having to have the name lock would probably be the easiest way.
Yeah.
And if you could just, shift click attack, I think would be a lot of fun.
It's not like it doesn't work right now. You can make Wild Strike builds, but problem is it's just... Yeah.
And you can have fun with them. They're not like horribly, horribly shit. It just has this clunkiness without a good reason.
Yeah. I like the idea of going crit with it so you can benefit from those status ailments of your attacks, but then that's another factor you have to take in your skill tree.
And then then it kind of is like, well, Inquisitor, because then at least you have all the pen for all the melee. It really does want to be an Inquisitor. But then the Inquisitor, for some fucking reason, after you have 2 elemental nodes, you have 3 melee damage nodes. And I'm like, oh my fucking god.
There's no winning here. Yeah.
I hate that so much.
I hate, if I make a build, I hate spending points that's not going to benefit me. Like, even if it's just 1 point that's inefficient just to get to another place, I hate that. It feels terrible. Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, my experience with Wild Strike was I had it in a 6 link with a pretty godly claw, and I struggled so much to kill Uber Azaro. It was just the single target on it
sucks.
Was so trash. I was like, I wanted to throw it out the window. Throw the gem out the window.
Maybe it was the claw, though, because claws are quite terrible.
But, like what Chris said in the podcast is they're probably not going to change too much about, until they come up with their solution to fix name locking and, improve quality of life features because of things like whirling blades in the past.
Yeah.
So which skill did you want to bring up, Hedgie?
The one I wanted to bring up was Decoy Totem. Now, it's not that I don't think it's powerful. I think it's maybe too powerful, so much so that it makes other defenses kind of like almost rendered pointless.
I want to point out that you think Hegemony's era is reasonable, but Decoy Totem's too powerful. Okay?
That's his pride. It's like his baby. He won't see any faults with it. There's nothing wrong with my child.
It's unique. I mean, it's not something you get after Brutus, right?
Maybe you should.
True. Decoy Totem is something you should get from fucking Shaper Kill.
You get it before Brutus, actually.
I think you get it when you enter prison. No, you get it right when you open the water pathway, don't you?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So then,
Marauder. But this
why is it too good then?
It's one link that does it all. It's just like, oh, you need defense? Just run a Decoy Totem. Just go damage and run a Decoy Totem. Put it out a little further so he has to run a little bit. And then if it dies, resummon it. It even got buffed. It got that when you taunt, enemies do 10% less damage to the to enemies that wasn't the original target. Right. So I was just like, what? We're giving Decoy Totem more tools.
Yeah.
Maybe we should give him taunt immunity.
I think
give bosses taunt immunity.
I think though it's not what the powerful thing with Decoy Totem is that it makes certain boss fights much easier because you can control the fight. But at the same time, a Decoy Totem is not the thing that's going to save you in maps, right? It's not going to save you from those unforeseen things. It's going to be really good against those things you can prepare for. And at the same time, how do you nerf Decoy Totem without making it useless? It has one goal, and that is to taunt the enemy. Like, if you nerf it so it can't taunt, it's just going to be really bad. It's just going to be a wooden dildo.
What I would like, I think you could do it in 2 ways. You could give Decoy Totem a cooldown.
Would
be one. But I'm not particularly a fan of cooldowns in the game in general. I honestly have never, it's never kind of hit my sweet spot. But that's definitely one thing. The other you could do is make it so that the taunt mechanic is more powerful in terms of, and what I mean by this is, if a mob is taunted, it will break its current attack pattern and move. Yeah. However, then a mob has to have taunt immunity after that taunt. So then you could use it to get the boss off you for a second to get like your energy shield cooldown or, get the fuck out of a situation. But you can't, for 5 minutes have the boss, in the corner being like, what's this totem here? I'm going to just take a look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so lame. It's like when you taunt something in World of Warcraft, and you're just like, this guy just keeps hitting the same idiot over and over, and there's fucking 25 people who he could easily kill. But yeah, this guy who stands there, the tankiest. Let's attack that.
Was there any other ways you guys think you could fix the totem?
I think your suggestion is actually a pretty. What do you think? Like, what time frame are we talking here?
I'm thinking like a 6-second cooldown on being able to spawn another one.
I think that would be
At least.
definitely power. Yeah, I was thinking that might be a little bit on the cautious side. Sure, when you're doing elemental damage, because if you're not a totem build, the totem's base resist will make it die quite quickly to high elemental bosses. But if you're talking about, the physical components of bosses, it lives pretty much through everything, which is surprising.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay as a tool, but, a player needs to invest a little more into it to make it so valuable. I mean, right now it's one red socket.
I know, I love it on an unset ring. It's just like, yes.
Yeah.
Maybe increases cast speed, so, it's so that
actually, you could probably nerf the area of effect and do an interest, because then, like, imagine you nerf the life and the area of effect so that it kind of requires an empower and then requires an increased area of effect gem.
Yeah.
And as a 3-link, at least then there's an investment and you're sacrificing something.
Exactly. That was going to be my suggestion. Make it actually requires supports for it to work, probably.
Right. That's it. Needs to require more supports.
Yeah.
Would you guys like the idea of significantly upping the strength requirement? Because I believe at level 20 it's 156 to make it more restrictive to casters, and then really only non-Iron Will casters. So imagine it costs like 250, 300 strength.
I feel like it's the casters and it's the rangers that's gonna need this the most. Obviously, it's also the ones that it's gonna be the most powerful for. So, I don't know. I don't think I like that. I like the other options better. What about you, Hedge?
I mean, nerfing the area of effect, it's okay. I don't think it's going to do the trick. It just needs a cooldown or something.
Okay.
Fair enough. And so, Lifting, what was the skill you wanted to chat about?
I wanted to bring up Arc. And Arc is actually used to be one of my favorite skills. It feels really good to use. It's gratifying, all that stuff. But with the way the game has changed from everything just having massive area of effect, Arc used to have decent clear speed because it could hit multiple targets. But with massive AoE now, it's just trumped by that. And then there is the issue of Arc just having horrible single targets. And then, sure, you can set up a Vault Storm Call setup. You can maybe have a 4-linked Storm Call or something like that. But it just doesn't feel too good anymore. And it's important to note, I'm not saying Arc is bad or anything like that. But it just has some issues. And I would really like to see Arc maybe getting some love again. What do you guys think could be done to solve this? Is because I don't feel like it's just giving it more damage. That's not going to solve the single target.
For the general clear, especially when you're talking about having access to doing the Inquisitor Call the Brotherhood ring, Arc can be an extremely powerful build.
Yeah.
But you do have that awkward scaling, as you're pointing out, that for you to have enough damage for your single target to feel smooth means that all the other content needs to be laughable, because you really need to up your Arc's power for a single target. Exactly.
And I don't have a solution to this. But it's really one of those skills I would love to see. But the problem is with bosses, this being the boss league and Uber Labyrinth, and Isaro just in general, Arc just feels pretty fucking shitty when you have to progress through the game.
Well, it used to be a flavor of the month. Oh, by the way, Lifting, check the primer real quick. But as far as like Arc being like a mainstream leveling skill, it had its time, and it was phenomenal. It was so popular that and people just cried nerf shortly after. I think it's so important because Arc is a skill kind of like Wild Strike, where it does a really good job at doing like the AoE clear, and more or less people like to use it with wands or daggers, and that only allows you to use one 6-link. So you have to come up with easy ways to get a really good single target.
Exactly.
You know? Maybe the solution is Vol Arc. I don't know.
But that's not going to work against the bosses, right?
Right. You can't always rely on those. Mm-hmm.
This then kind of comes down to the argument of should skills be using a different skill setup for single target than they would their general clear. And I actually like the idea of having to use something else for single target. The only problem is when you have so many skills that don't need a single target, you're getting punished for no good reason.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I feel like Ball Lightning maybe has some of the same situations, but it's still in a somewhat better place than Arc. I feel there's a lot of spells that could have gotten some attention as well, instead of the numbers we saw on the melee skills. But yeah.
I mean, Ball Lightning was really popular at one point too, right? It's kind of like the Cyclone of spells. You can do AoE and single target very, very well with Ball Lightning because it'll hit multiple times, and you don't get punished that hard. But I'm sure it's a cyclical thing, and it'll come back around, and I think it'll definitely get buffed.
Yeah. The question is how. I don't think it's a matter of just giving it damage. I would like for if you could chain on the fucking same target, but that would be too powerful.
Yeah, Arc now does 1 billion damage.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll probably buff Decoy Totem so that you could chain off of your own decoy.
Yeah, that's what we need. That's what we need, man. It's going to be like a Tesla coil.
Yeah.
You could, I guess, writhing flasks to get extra ads and then try to arc off the ads, but
yeah.
No, it definitely kind of is like, well, switch your gems for it.
Yeah.
And that's actually a little bit of a general problem with a lot of some of the, especially lightning and cold skills, where it's just kind of like, well,
yeah,
you don't have ignite, do you? So get ignite.
That's what some people are doing to solve the problem.
Yeah, by converting all your lightning damage to fire, and which is clever.
Yeah,
but it can feel a bit restrictive when you're like, well, that's kind of my only option. Isn't it? It's Fox Tactics.
Yeah, exactly.
Is known for doing that full conversion, I believe.
And I mean, it's not why you choose Arc, right? Or in many cases, you don't choose Arc to go fire with it, but it's a possibility. So guys, we go ahead.
I think it's such a thing where like AoE skills are so popular as a good AoE clearing skill, but then you can conk effect it to achieve the single target. Whereas the single bolt doesn't really have that for Arc. You can use slower proj with projectiles, but Arc is not a proj and it's not an AoE. So you're like, what can I do with my supports to achieve better single target?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Exactly. So guys, we're nearing the end here. Do you have anything you would like to bring up before we end?
All I would say is if you do have a hideout of that you want to potentially be showcased for hideout of the week, or if you have a build that you want us to showcase or that, send me a message. Make sure it's not a whisper, but a Twitch message or a Reddit message. It's just ProjectPT, and that'll put it on the list, and I'll try to get in touch with you. And thank you for everyone who's submitted so far, and that I might not have responded to yet because spam.
Hedgie, anything?
No, it was fun. Did we show the hideout of the week this week? Because I only saw like a clip.
Yeah, we did show.
Okay.
So I think I'm gonna go do a lottery, and I kind of want to make a few 6-links tonight. So I think I'll be booting up the stream for that. It's probably gonna take me like 57 tries. Besides that, that's it for tonight, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. If you like the show, give the channel a follow, and we'll see you again next Sunday live at same time we started today. And also, if you didn't catch tonight's show, you can find the full video on Hegemony's YouTube in a few hours. So be a little patient. I'm cleaning up some audio and all that stuff. Take care, guys, and thank you for tuning in.
Later, guys.